What if I told you that archaeologists have discovered not one, but two different structures that could be King David's palace? These aren't fantasy reconstructions or artistic interpretations. These are massive stone buildings from the 10th century BCE that have ignited one of the biggest debates in biblical archaeology. In the next 15 minutes, I'll show you the evidence that has some archaeologists convinced they've found the palace of Israel's most famous king, and why others say we need to look more carefully at the stones. Welcome back to the Artifacts Detective. I'm your host, and today we're investigating one of the most controversial discoveries in biblical archaeology, the search for King David's palace. According to the Bible, David transformed Israel from a loose confederation of tribes into a powerful kingdom. After conquering Jerusalem from the Jebusites, he built a royal palace with the help of Phoenician craftsmen sent by King Hiram of Tyre. For centuries, this palace existed only in the pages of Scripture. But in 2005, Israeli archaeologist Dr. Eilat Mazar announced she had found it. Then, in 2013, another team claimed they'd discovered a second palace at a different site. These discoveries have sparked fierce debates that go to the heart of biblical archaeology. Can we trust the Bible as a historical source? Did David's kingdom really exist as described? And how do we interpret the stones we dig up? This investigation matters because it touches on fundamental questions about the origins of ancient Israel and the reliability of biblical history. If these are truly royal palaces from David's time, they provide tangible proof of the united monarchy. If not, we need to reconsider our understanding of this crucial period. Today we'll examine the archaeological evidence from both palace discoveries, the dating methods that place these buildings in David's time, the heated scholarly debates about what these structures really are. Let's dig into the evidence. The story begins not in 2005, but in 1997, when Dr. Eilat Mazar published a bold article in Biblical Archaeology Review titled "Excavate King David's Palace." She wasn't just speculating. She had a theory based on a careful reading of 2 Samuel 5:17. When the Philistines heard that David was anointed king over Israel, all the Philistines went up to seek David, and David heard of it and went down to the hold. Dr. Mazar, granddaughter of pioneering archaeologist Benjamin Mazar, reasoned that if David went down to the fortress after hearing about the Philistine threat, his palace must have been built above and outside the old Jebusite city walls. She even published a map with an arrow pointing to the exact spot where she believed the palace would be found. It took 8 years to secure funding and permissions, but in February 2005, Dr. Mazar finally began digging. What she found exceeded all expectations. Just 2 meters below the surface, after removing Byzantine and Second Temple period remains, Mazar's team uncovered massive walls that took their breath away. The structure featured walls between 6 and 8 feet wide built of enormous stones. Construction techniques indicating monumental architecture, a scale unprecedented for the 10th century BCE in Israel. Integration with the famous stepped stone structure below. The stepped stone structure itself is a marvel, standing 20 meters tall and clearly visible from the Mount of Olives across the valley. It's the largest uncovered Iron Age structure in Israel. Prior to Mazar's discovery, archaeologists believed it was built during the Jebusite period. But Mazar discovered something remarkable. The walls of her large stone structure actually interlocked with the stepped stone structure, proving they were part of the same massive complex. As Mazar later said, the fact that the two structures were part of the same construction was an astonishing discovery for us. But how could Mazar be sure this structure dated to David's time? The evidence came from multiple sources. First, the pottery. Dr. Mazar specialized in Iron Age pottery, particularly that of the early Iron IA period, the 10th century BCE. The pottery found beneath the structure dated to Iron Age wine, 12th to 11th centuries BCE, while the pottery found within the structure dated to Iron Age 2A, 10th to 9th centuries BCE. According to the law of superposition, older things are lower down. This placed the construction squarely in David's time. Second, carbon-14 dating. Radiocarbon samples from the structure confirmed the pottery dating, placing construction between the late 11th and early 10th centuries BCE. Third, the Phoenician connection. The team discovered 2 Phoenician-styled ivory inlays and imported pottery from Cyprus. This matches perfectly with the biblical account of King Hiram of Tyre sending craftsmen to build David's palace. But the structure yielded more than just walls and pottery. In 2005, a supervisor named Yoav Farhi spotted something extraordinary: a tiny Bullae clay seal impression sitting in the crack of a wall, sunlight glancing off its raised letters. When Mazar deciphered it at home, she experienced what she called a special family moment. The Bullae read, "Belonging to Jehucal, son of Shelemiah, son of Shovi." This wasn't just any name. Jehucal is mentioned twice in the book of Jeremiah as a royal official during the last days of the kingdom of Judah. In 2008, they found a second Bullae, belonging to Gedaliah ben Pashur, another official mentioned in Jeremiah 38:1. These bullae suggested the large stone structure continued to serve as a royal administrative center for centuries after David, right up to the Babylonian destruction in 586 BCE. In 2007, Mazar had to pause her palace excavation when one of the towers of the stepstone structure threatened to collapse. This interruption proved fortuitous. The northern tower excavation yielded a cache of more than 100 clay bullae, suggesting that there was a large archive in the palace. The bullae indicate a sophisticated governmental bureaucracy managing the kingdom from this location. While debates raged about Mazar's Jerusalem discovery, another team was excavating a hilltop fortress 30 kilometers southwest of Jerusalem. Khirbet Qeiyafa overlooks the valley of Elah, the very place where David fought Goliath according to the Bible. From 2007 to 2013, Professor Yosef Garfinkel of Hebrew University and Sar Gano of the Israel Antiquities Authority led excavations at this strategic site. What they found in 2013 made headlines worldwide. The team uncovered 2 large buildings dated to the 10th century BCE. The first structure was palatial in scale and design, located at the highest point of the city, controlled all the houses lower in the city, provided strategic views from the Mediterranean to the Hebron Mountains. Around 1,000 square meters in area, 30-meter-long enclosing wall, impressive entrance descending to the southern gate. As Garfinkel noted, the palace is located in the center of the site and controls all of the houses lower than it in the city. From here, one has an excellent vantage looking out into the distance, from as far as the Mediterranean Sea in the west to the Hebron Mountains and Jerusalem in the east. This is an ideal location from which to send messages by means of fire signals. The second building was identified as a royal storehouse, pillared building 15 meters long by 6 meters wide. Located in the north of the city, designed for storing agricultural taxes, hundreds of storage jars with stamped official seals. The dating of Khirbet Qeiyafa is remarkably secure. Carbon-14 tests on 19 burned olive pits from the site yielded dates between 1050 to 970 BCE, precisely David's era. The pottery assemblages match this dating perfectly. But what really sets Khirbet Qeiyafa apart is its urban planning. The city features casemate walls, double walls with chambers between, a belt of houses incorporating the casemates, 2 gates leading to identification with biblical sha'arayim, 2 gates. City planning typical of Judean sites, not Canaanite or Philistine. As the excavators stated, Khirbet Qeiyafa is the best example exposed to date of a fortified city from the time of King David. This is unequivocal evidence of a kingdom's existence, which knew to establish administrative centers at strategic points. The city came to a sudden violent end around 980 BCE. Hundreds of restorable pottery vessels, stone tools, and metal objects were left on the floors of houses. The excavators believe it was destroyed in one of the battles against the Philistines. Intriguingly, the site was abandoned after just one generation of use, perhaps no longer needed once David eliminated the Philistine threat and Solomon began his peaceful reign. These discoveries have split the archaeological community into opposing camps. Supporters of the palace identification include Dr. Eilat Mazar, Jerusalem Discovery, Professor Yosef Garfinkel, Khirbet Qeiyafa, Eilat Mazar, Hebrew University, William G. Dever, University of Arizona. They argue that the monumental scale indicates royal construction. Dating methods consistently point to the 10th century BCE. The buildings match biblical descriptions. Administrative bullae prove governmental function. No other explanation fits the evidence as well. As Garfinkel stated about Khirbet Qeiyafa, there is no question that the ruler of the city sat here, and when King David came to visit the hills, he slept here. Critics include Israel Finkelstein, Tel Aviv University, David Ussishkin, Tel Aviv University, Zeev Herzog, Tel Aviv University. Their objections: biblical bias influences interpretation. Pottery dating can be disputed. Jerusalem was too small to be a major capital. Structures might be Jebusite, Canaanite, or from later periods. Palace identification is premature. Finkelstein argues that the large stone structure dates to the 9th century BCE or later, not David's time. He claims that all one can safely say is that its various elements post-date the late Iron I, Early Iron IIA and predate the Roman period. David Ussishkin recently proposed that Khirbet Qeiyafa wasn't a city at all, but a massive cultic compound. Though this theory has found little support, the chronological debate is crucial. Finkelstein promotes a low chronology that would push these buildings into the 9th century after David's time. But recent scientific advances have largely resolved this issue. Radiocarbon dating from both sites consistently yields 10th century dates. Archaeomagnetic dating of burnt materials confirms the chronology. Pottery seriation from dozens of sites supports the traditional dating. Microarchaeology, analyzing charred seeds, provides precision within a decade. The convergence of multiple dating methods has convinced most scholars that these buildings do indeed date to the 10th century BCE, the time of David. Let's examine what we've discovered. The evidence for royal palaces includes monumental architecture, unprecedented for the period, strategic locations controlling important territories, administrative artifacts indicating governmental function, construction techniques showing Phoenician influence, and dating consistently pointing to the 10th century BCE. If these are David's palaces, they prove the biblical account preserves genuine historical memory. David's kingdom was more than a tribal chieftainship. Jerusalem was already a significant center in the 10th century, and royal administration existed as the Bible describes. Even skeptics acknowledge these are important discoveries. As Israel Finkelstein admitted about Khirbet Qeiyafa, I think the best way to describe Qeiyafa is as a sort of large and, frankly, quite unique fort. What's compelling is how different types of evidence converge. Archaeological stratigraphy, multiple dating methods, biblical geography, administrative artifacts, and architectural analysis. When independent lines of evidence point to the same conclusion, it strengthens the case considerably. The evidence strongly suggests that both structures date to the 10th century BCE and represent royal or administrative buildings. Whether we can definitively call them David's palaces depends partly on how we weigh biblical evidence alongside archaeological data. What's undeniable is that these discoveries have transformed our understanding of 10th century BCE Israel. They prove that significant state formation was occurring exactly when the Bible places David's kingdom. The debate now isn't whether complex political entities existed, but rather their exact nature and extent. What's your take on these discoveries? Do you think archaeologists have found David's palaces, or do we need more evidence? Let me know in the comments below. For more archaeological investigations like this, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. And remember, they buried the evidence, but we dig it up. This is the Artifacts Detective, and I'll see you in the next investigation. Uncover more ancient mysteries, follow the Artifacts Detective and join the investigation.